All right, so I think we're on time. Welcome everyone to this webinar from Conscia, where we are going to focus a bit on the hybrid enterprise connectivity. And we have with us our partners Cisco and Kyle from AlgoSec to go through some of the new stuff that we are seeing here, and also a little bit of status about where we are and what to do in the future in this space. So we have a pretty much Scandinavian audience here today, at least on the attendee list, but we'll do this in English because it will be recorded for our whole for all the customers to see later. And if you have any questions or comments, you can use the chat in WebEx. And please, if we can't answer directly, we'll pick up all the questions and get back to you after the show. So my name is Øyvind Ellefsen. I'm an architect in Conscia. I do network design and solutions, focus primarily on the data center side of things, but been doing a lot of networking over the years. So a lot of you can contact me directly if you need. If you haven't met me before, you can just do oe@conscia.com or just follow up on the email that you will receive after this webinar. With me today, I have Gaute Melius from Cisco. He works as a solution engineer here in Oslo. And I have Kyle Wickert from AlgoSec. I think he's based in Canada, as far as I know, so it's early morning for him. So if he looks a bit tired, you know why. So a bit on Conscia and where we are. I think some of you probably have seen this before, but next slide. We do have a kind of Northern European presence, as you know. We have been doing a bit of growth lately. So for some of you, this might be news. We are kind of getting into the UK, Ireland, as well as Belgium. It's our last kind of acquisitions, and we're also growing quite rapidly in our existing countries in Scandinavia and Northern Europe. So as you can probably guess by then, we are exposed to quite a lot of the data center installs in this market. So we see a lot of customers that have started to use Cisco ACI and also have security solutions from both Cisco and other vendors in the market. And a lot of customers are kind of on the path of getting more back from that investment into ACI and trying to find new ways to use the functionality of the solution better than what they're doing today. Kind of the traditional approach was to use the network-centric mode and kind of use ACI as a plain data center network without any security features. But the promise of ACI is that we can do a lot more. And what we're going to talk about today is a bit, at least one way of realizing that and kind of for you guys to get more out of your network, more visibility, more security, and kind of utilize the network in a new and hopefully better way. There's a lot of ways to do this, but I think this solution that we're going to, or integration that we're going to show you today is quite interesting one. And I hope that if you see that this will fit you, or if you want to discuss this, at least you have now some faces that you can contact and discuss further. You can contact us or Cisco or AlgoSec directly if you want to. So with that, I'm just gonna give the board to Gaute, and you can take over from here. We're going to talk about this webinar is about 45 minutes. We have some time at the end for Q&A. So if there are anything that you want to raise in the chat, we can discuss it at the end. And if we run over time, you can stay on if you want to discuss with us in the chat. Otherwise, we'll try to aim for about 45 minutes in total. All right, over to you, Gaute.
Thank you, Øyvind. As you said, for those that don't know me, I'm Gaute Melius, one of the solution engineers in Now we call it the Cloud and AI team in Cisco Norway. And in today's webinar, we plan, as you said, to focus on some of the challenges that we see in today's market and how we in Cisco and AlgoSec combined can help you to address and solve at least some of them. And after talking to customers, this is the reality most of you are facing today. We see more applications than ever before. Globally, 750 million new applications will be launched by the end of this year, where most of them are distributed across multiple environments. The pace of operation is accelerating. Organization must deploy infrastructure and apps 56% faster than 3 years ago, which is, I would say, significant. One interesting thing is that the attack surface is expanding. 125% raise in cyber threats in the last year, and the cost of cybercrime reaching 10 trillion in 2025. That's outrageous. And we see an ongoing mandate to do more with less. Cloud cost keeps climbing 20% versus last year, with no really end in sight. Increasing demands for sustainability and of course the search of data for our AI applications are massive. And this stresses our networks, our compute capabilities, and drives complexity as well, obviously. Next, please. So when it comes to data center operations, we know IT organizations are looking for at least 3 things. 1, they want to make life easier for their teams. 2, they want to be able to see around corners. And 3, they want to bring it all together with automation and integration. Making life easier for a business teams means the ability to rapidly deploy applications on a programmable infrastructure in minutes, and to monitor and track everything across. And see around corners means being able to continuously find and close security gaps to drive business resiliency, which is something we in Cisco is working on to address with the hybrid mesh firewall and Hypershield. And AlgoSec has done this for years when it comes to larger security vendors in the market. And secondly, in the see around corners, I think that proactively prevent and resolve issues, security and otherwise, before they actually impact the users. And also here, AlgoSec or the AlgoSec solutions is a very good fit. And of course, we know IT teams wants to bring it all together, which involves ensuring seamless automation and orchestration into existing IT and business processes. And that's what a simple, secure, scalable, seamless system looks like for me. Next, please. So back in 2014, Cisco launched the first true SDN solution, and it has become a success. Over 13,000 customers has deployed or adopted ACI, and I think that the bullet points on the right-hand side is at least some of the reasons why our customers still choose us to build their most critical data center infrastructure or architectures around the world. Multi-tenancy is especially important in the MSP environment out there, but we also see traditional enterprise customers that leverage the multi-tenancy and the advanced segmentation features that ACI is built upon. From the very beginning, ACI was based on a zero trust model where segmented zones were not allowed to talk to each other, if not explicitly configured so, and I will touch upon that later. And over the years, we have developed ACI to become what I mean a flexible solution in terms of deployment option. And after feedback from customers and what we have seen from an adoption perspective, we are focusing on giving a cloud-like operation model for an on-prem environment and moved away from trying to abstract the controller or the ACI controller functionality we had in the public cloud. We are moving away from that. I'm referring to the cloud APIC or the cloud network controller that kind of translated the ACI construct into, for instance, Azure networking and segmentation constructs. In the latest release of ACI and ISE, we have finally managed to be able to stitch policies across domains. We call this common policy, and this is a feature many of our customers has asked for. I think we will see some great enhancements in this space the upcoming year. And Nexus as Code or Network as Code has been a great initiative from our CX organization that let customers more easily use our API for provisioning and securing their environment. And not at least, ACI with ACI, we have a great and broad ecosystem that leverage our APIs to further enhance our solution. And a good example of this is AlgoSec. So next, please. Straight from the beginning of ACI, we had the API first strategy. And this was almost at the same time we saw the adoption of public cloud services and the request for an on-prem fabric that could more easily be managed through APIs, similar to the public clouds. And over the years, ACI has evolved from a single fabric to a complete solution that is not only covering a single data center, but also multiple locations. We call this multipod, multiple availability zones, which we call multi-site, and also distributed sites like putting a remote leaf on a island somewhere in Norway or on a mountaintop or whatever. Also could be used as a 5G edge. We have had for several years integration towards the major hypervisors, which let us as the NetOps team get more visibility into the virtualized environments and be able to apply the same security policies on virtual switches as in the physical fabrics. And as Øyvind mentioned, in ACI 5.x, we launched a very important enhancement, in my opinion, that made the transition from network-centric, which were typically VLAN-based, to a more application-centric segmentation solution, typical like a web app DB way. And with today's latest release, we also enable customers to integrate with some of the other solutions with a goal of creating a common policy across different domains. For instance, you can, with the latest ACI release, integrate with ICE, so we can more easily map end user SGT or a security group tag made by ISE or .1x to an endpoint group or an endpoint security group, which I will talk about later. And personally, I think this is a very important enhancement, and I wanted to give you a short recap of the concepts of EPGs, ESGs, and contracts. And after that, I think Kyle will show you how AlgoSec actually uses these constructs to see how policies are being used across our ACI fabrics and the other security enforcement points, if we could call it that, that you use in your environment, and probably also public cloud. Next, please. Perfect. Thank you, Kyle. So ACI operates in a so-called whitelist model, or something that is more commonly referred to as a zero trust model. And the main goal of this deployment model is to block any kind of traffic which is meant to be traversed differently segmented namespaces. And what does a segmented namespace mean in ACI? Well, we can consider a segmented namespace, EPG, endpoint group. And an endpoint group is the object that the APIC, the controller of ACI, offers in order to apply security policies to a common set of endpoints that require the same security rules. So as you can see here, we have 3 different EPGs across two bridge domains. We have EPG 1, 2, and 3, and traffic across different EPGs. For instance, between EPG 1 and EPG 2 in this drawing is by default always blocked by ACI. And this is what we mean with a zero trust or whitelist model. And traffic within the same EPG, for example, across the two VMs and the physical server we have under EPG 1 is always allowed. This is the default behavior of ACI, but this is something that obviously you as a user can change. Maybe you want to have traffic between EPG 1 and EPG 2 allowed only for a specific service. And how do we do this? Well, we can do this thanks to the contracts. Now, the contracts are the security zoning rules, the security policies that ACI uses. Next, please. Yeah, oh, now you're on next already, sorry. The contracts work a little bit different from the legacy access list or ACLs. As most of you know, the ACLs were supposed to define them to add all the rules, the conditions of the ACLs by specifying the source IP, the destination IP, eventually source port, destination port, if we also wanted to add layer 4 headers. And then once the ACLs were ready, you have to apply it to a layer 3 interface, a SVI sub-interface, as the routed traffic had to cross that interface. The ACL was meant to inspect all the packets, match the rules, and eventually take an action like permit or deny. With the contracts in ACI, we work in a slightly different way. First of all, we don't care about the source IP or the destination IP anymore, and that is maybe the major point. We still classify the traffic when it arrives into the fabric, but at that point we associate the packet with what we call the PC tag, which is the ID of the EPG. Because all the rules, when we want to decide from and to, we want to evaluate and match the from and to destination of the traffic, we are going to look at the EPG ID. We do not care about the IP source or their IP destination anymore. Within each contract, we can insert what we call a filter that specifies what we want to do with the specific source or destination port, for instance, permit or deny. In that sense, someone could call ACI a stateless layer 4 firewall. I'm not too sure if I agree with that, but anyway. And in a contract, we can also include other functions or action. For instance, we can steer some of the traffic between EPG 1 and EPG 2 to external service, like a firewall. Next, please. So in ACI 501, we introduced a new security concept called ESG, which got way much better in 5.21. The ESG was then a new solution for classifying the endpoints into different security groups. So what we do is actually decoupling the network forwarding and the security segmentation. The classic EPG do still exist for the forwarding part, but the security and policy enforcement can be done with ESGs, which is a way more flexible way to segment your workload and to move, as Øyvind mentioned, from a network-centric to a more application-centric solution. And before we introduced ESGs, we had some sort of limitation when it came to segmentation. And this limitation has been around since the beginning of ACI, and where we only had developed the EPGs, obviously. So yeah, let's have a look at that. Next slide, please. As mentioned, we had some limitation with EPGs. And as an example, in this case, you see here we have a single bridge domain, a unique EPG, and 3 endpoints attached to the same EPG. This is a very typical scenario when moving from legacy or from a traditional VLAN segmentation to ACI. And in this scenario, we cannot have different security rules applied to the 3 different endpoints because they're part of the same EPG. So that was one of the limitations. Maybe if that was possible, but not all the time this was possible, we could have selected a different encapsulation VLAN on how we were, let's say, expecting the frames to be forwarded from the fabric. Next, please. And on top of this, what if we wanted an additional subnet to be part of EPG1? We could have needed to create a new bridge domain with a new EPG, and then we will have to replicate some of the contracts. So in this case, it would require a lot of configuration. And obviously, bridge domains can also contain, as on the right-hand side, more than one subnet. So someone could actually have said that they wanted to add a second subnet to the same bridge domain, which allowed us to have two different subnets in the same EPG. For example, what about 10.0.0.1 broadcasts, which are originated in EPG1, will be able to reach the endpoints in EPG2. Because when we are talking about the same bridge domain, we are also talking about the same broadcast domain. So we wanted to remove these kind of limitation, and due to this, we created the ESGs. Next, please. Now, with the ESGs, first of all, we are not bound anymore to the bridge domain like the EPGs are. Next, or just click one further. That means that we could have security groups that are spanning across the entire VRF. In my case here, as you can see, we have now created two ESGs, the web ESG and the app ESG, and it doesn't matter where these endpoints are. You see that they have two different subnets, 1 and 2 in ESG web, one that is 168.1.11 and one that is 168.2.11. They can be part of the same security group and communicate freely with each other, even though they don't have a contract between them, and they belong to different EPGs. So this is one of the enhancements with ESGs. So I can associate a contract as a provider or a consumer just once between ESG web and app, and it will have effect on both endpoints in both ESGs, no matter if they are on different subnets, on different bridge domains, or in different EPGs. And the classification of the endpoints into the different ESGs can be done in several methods. We can use IPv4 or IPv6 as selectors. We can use tags, which I'm very fond of. Tags that you apply into the AP configuration, or tags that we read from the VMM integration, the integration towards VMware or other hypervisor, or actually the VM name itself. We can also say, hey, you know what? I want EPG1 to be entirely part of ESG web. That means that all the endpoints that are going to be learned thanks to the encapsulation VLAN that we are using for EPG1 are also going to be identified or classified as the web ESG endpoint. In 6.1.4, we also introduced some new selectors that specifies external subnets and VXLAN BD selectors, but we don't have time to go through that now, but just be aware that there are some new selectors in 6.1.4F as well. So wrapping it up, we have a lot more flexibility with this segmentation solution, the ESG, than what we had with EPG. So back to the challenges we face today in a hybrid world. We think these are some of the headaches that our customers have today. And let's face it, we in Cisco can solve many of them, but we do admit that we are not the only vendor out in the market. And personally, I think that is why we need excellent integration partners such as AlgoSec. They have for years had great integrations towards many of the largest security and segmentation providers or vendors, including ACI, both on-prem solutions that have been virtualized or physical as ACI, and also towards public cloud solutions. And that's why we are so pleased to work with you guys, Kyle, with AlgoSec, and have your products and your solutions on our GPL, which means that you as a customer can actually buy AlgoSec through Cisco and of course through Conscia. So with that, over to you, Kyle.
Likewise, we're always happy to partner with Cisco and Conscia. So let's bring this all together and talk about how both Cisco and AlgoSec work together to make this a reality in a complex hybrid environment. I'll start by sharing this, right? When I talk globally with all of our customers, customers that are working in the data center, in the cloud, the campus, and the WAN, and we ask them why. Why are those policies deployed in those devices, whether they're contracts, firewall rules, cloud NSGs, or what's driving the volume of change in their environment? They tell us that the vast majority of those policies are there to enable line of business applications. And so many people in the marketplace are familiar with AlgoSec as a firewall management solution, but it is so much more than that. We're really a solution that's about building, managing, and securing connectivity in a hybrid environment. Seldom today, to make a business application work end-to-end, are you just touching ACI, or are you just touching a firewall, or just the cloud? All of it needs to come together to make that business application work end-to-end. And what I want to take you through over the next 10 minutes or so is a brief overview of what that looks like in reality. So as I mentioned, AlgoSec looks at the world through the lens of a business application. And for today's overview, I have an important business application for my line of business, customer account portal. What you see here is the application dashboard. This is really about building and maintaining metadata and insights we know about this application, whether it's different fields, tags, or important business contacts. But let's take a look at the flows. And I want to make a very important comment. What you see here, these are not ACI contracts. These are not firewall rules. What this represents is application intent, decoupled from the underlying network. We can see all of these flows are green. They're green because they're healthy from a routing and a policy standpoint, anywhere this application needs to go in the enterprise. We can understand that because if we look at a particular flow, we can leverage AlgoSec's traffic simulation technology to understand how it moves through the environment. This particular flow routes through my Nexus data center, through a couple of third-party firewalls, into specific networks. This particular flow routes solely through ACI, where it's permitted by an existing contract in the environment. And so what you're seeing is how AlgoSec marries application intent with the underlying policy, regardless of the technology that it happens to be needing to move across. And here, for example, on this ACI example, we can see the specific contract allowing the access. And unique to AlgoSec, we're actually tagging the policies in AlgoSec, not on the native platform, with the applications that they support. What this means is that in the core of our platform, that everyone is probably familiar with AlgoSec for, not only can we provide core visibility to firewall rules, contracts, EPGs, ESGs. Here we can see where this IP lives inside of a particular contract because it resides in an ESG. I can also see where this lives on a firepower device. But now I can answer the age-old question: which security policies support which applications in a multi-vendor complex environment? And what you'll see in the AlgoSec platform is this insight changes all of the core reporting. Not only are you looking at risk of the risk of your firewall rules and your contracts and your cloud, but you're understanding why it's there. And for us, that changes the outcomes customers can achieve with the platform. Not only are you getting a big list of risks or cleanup opportunities or non-compliant policy, but you can understand why it's there and drive towards achieving those outcomes faster of remediation. Now let's say for a moment, as the owner of an application, typically new connectivity means a traditional firewall change request in most modern enterprises, a SharePoint portal, an Excel spreadsheet, but we allow you to drive that right from the application model. So let's say for a moment, we need some new connectivity within our data center, and we've just deployed a new EC2 instance in AWS. Let's make that part of this architecture. Let's go ahead and add our EC2 instance to the particular flow. And let's also add a brand new flow that needs to move across our data center. And what you'll see is, as I begin to change the application model, AlgoSec will automatically start vetting that connectivity against our risk profiles, our traditional network zoning, and assess how this might actually impact in your environment before the change is requested. And this is important because one of the more powerful one of the powerful use cases we see customers using the platform for is creating a situation where business users have a far better experience in the changes they submit. I just got back from the UK a couple of weeks ago, and one of our largest financial customers in the UK has driven their change rejection rate down from 24% to 3.5% because they're getting better structured requests from the business into the process. And here we can see this flow is blocked, so I'm definitely going to need a change. This additional flow is blocked as well, and I'm going to need to make a change inside of my ACI infrastructure. I can also understand how this proposed connectivity might traverse specific network zones in our environment. We know this because when you deploy the core of our platform, you're telling us what's the campus, what's the DMZ, what are your protected enclaves. We're also tying vulnerability data to this. We're able to pull in data from your vulnerability management platforms, overlay it on top of this connectivity model, and allow you to understand the risk of your application, and also blind spots, unscanned assets that are part of this application's connectivity, but may not have any scan data. And these are the types of insights you can use to create guardrails in your process. Perhaps you want to say no changes to or from unscanned assets. Easily something you can do when you're gating using this type of data. But let's go ahead and click Activate Application. What this is going to do now is do two things that business users, project managers, application architects really don't like doing: submitting a traditional firewall change request and updating the reference of the connectivity they need for their particular business function. And so what we've just done very quickly is use the application as a very powerful change submission methodology. And what we'll see in a moment is this application will have submitted a change down into the underlying platform. This application is now pending implementation. And what we have is a brand new change to deliver across the underlying infrastructure. Where we're going to go now is the underlying intelligent automation that AlgoSec delivers across your hybrid environment. And typically what comes first is guiding and assisting and informing your network analyst to figure out where to make a change faster. Here we can see we're no longer looking at application intent. We're looking at real network devices, real security enforcement technologies that need a change to permit this access. Here we can see we need to make a change inside of AWS, on a traditional firewall, across ACI, and another firewall as well. Of course, as a network analyst, I always have the ability to override this recommendation. I can arbitrarily remove devices. I can arbitrarily add devices. You always have the final say to control where this access is going to go. We're simply trying to provide you insights using our algorithms to augment the human know-how and make you more efficient. Once I confirm devices, now we move forward to the next step of intelligence. This is what we call the smart security assessment. Our goal is to now introduce security guardrails into the process to allow you to understand if this change is going to introduce risk into the environment. We talked about providing those insights to the submitter. Now we're providing those same guardrails in the process itself. You're probably also looking at what I'm presenting and thinking, wow, this is a lot of button presses. The whole process I'm describing can happen end to end without a human being clicking a button if that's a level of maturity you want to get to. This is actually one of the more common areas where customers will implement zero touch. You might want to say, crossing our ACI fabric over HTTPS, low risk, automatically approved. Whereas something that's crossing many enforcement boundaries, perhaps carrying sensitive payload, perhaps moving over an important protocol that you want to give more review to, that's something that can stop for human interaction. And that's really where AlgoSec shines, is giving you the ability to automate very, very quickly where you need to, and also have the humans interact in the process where it makes sense to do so, making you more efficient, but also more accurate. Here we can see this particular change is introducing some policy risk. We've also got insights into endpoint vulnerability data. We can see we've got some blind spots. We can also see all the application metadata, which is very, very important. All that information from the application level is automatically passed with the change request. When I talk to customers, they often tell me risk analysis is great, but what slows down processing of change is lack of context. And so when you organically introduce that into the process, you can always make yourself more efficient. Again, going back to zero touch, maybe you want to say campus to campus over HTTPS for a development application or a UAT application. You can make those types of decisions to enable more efficiency when you have the data to do so. We'll go ahead and approve this change. And once we approve the change, the question becomes, how do we implement it? And not just how do we implement it, but how do we implement it in the most efficient way possible? Now, for those of you familiar with AlgoSec, you'll know we do lots of policy optimization. This is part of our core platform. It's something we've done for a very long time. Unused policies, redundant policies. But when I talk to customers, I want to have conversations about how we can prevent you from having to do a cleanup project every 2 or 3 years. And this is applicable across every device we support, including ACI. Here, we're going to now design a new contract to be implemented inside of this ACI tenant to allow the access. And here we can see a brand new contract utilizing ESGs from the environment and an existing filter, and the creation of a brand new contract with net new EPGs using our naming convention implementation. We can also then implement standardization of these policies, implementation of a standardized contract name. We can also attach service graphs, allowing us to offload traffic to external devices if that's something you wanted to introduce as well. We also are going to implement the relevant NSG policies inside of AWS. And as I described at the beginning, it's not uncommon in today's world to need to implement not only contracts and policies inside of ACI, but contracts on adjacent firewalls, north-south, multiple firewalls and cloud gateways, and inside of the cloud native infrastructure itself. And AlgoSec allows you to do just that by abstracting to the application level, thinking of the world in terms of connectivity, and then applying that connectivity to the specific enforcement technologies. We can then take these policies, regardless of the device, and apply them using our active change technology. With one button press, one API call, or one scheduler, you can apply this to all of these technologies in a unified manner. Everybody assumes that once a policy is pushed, though, that it's complete. However, customers tell us one of the worst things you can do is tell the business that it's implemented if there's a defect, right? Returning a defect back to the business. And so we introduce one final step of intelligence called smart validation. We're leveraging our ability to monitor all of the infrastructure, ACI, cloud, firewalls, and bring it all together with smart validation. We will automatically check if what was implemented aligns to the design. And if it lines up perfectly, we will automatically close the request and close the life cycle and update the application. However, if there's still a defect, as you can see here, we will automatically notify the appropriate network operators that something has gone wrong in the implementation inside the change window. So you can take remediation steps, complete the change successfully, and avoid returning defects back to the business. So all of this comes together to deliver value for you in 2 areas. We really look at the things in really 2 lenses. First is very tactical, time savings. It's not uncommon to see a 70 to 80% reduction per change in the time it takes to deliver that change. And for those of you operating change request processes in your organizations today, you'll know that this is not just one big number. This affects many different stakeholders: cloud operations, networks, security, different business stakeholders. And we want to create that reduction across the board. You can get as high as 100% time reduction when you start also maturing into zero touch. If no one needs to look at the change request and it's automatically approved, that's a huge time savings. We also see strategic time savings and efficiency gains for our customers. At the end of the day, AlgoSec aims to shorten the time it takes for you to deliver new business applications to market and avoid connectivity being the bottleneck. We see customers that are very good at spinning up VM, CPU, storage very, very quickly. But connectivity, particularly across multi-vendor enforcement technologies, is still a bottleneck. And that's exactly where we fit in. We want to increase the productivity, right? Create a frictionless experience, not only for the operators implementing the changes, but for the business users, project managers, application architects at the front end of the process that just need connectivity to do their jobs. Naturally, where this touches developers and ties deeper into application pipelines, we also want to drastically reduce the developer effort to interface with the process as well. So I hope that brief overview of the AlgoSec technology was valuable, and we've just scratched the surface of what we can do in terms of building and managing and securing the connectivity that moves across these hybrid environments. But I'll hand it back to our friends at Conscia, and obviously we'll stay on the line for some Q&A as well.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Kyle and Goethe. That was very informative. I mean, I've done a lot of ACI installs over the last 10, 12 years, and this is one of the coolest integrations I've seen. It's like really helpful, just straight out of the box, low effort, and you get a lot of value out of it. And I think, it really shines when you do the AlgoSec integration, across not just ACI, but your whole infrastructure. So for those of you out there looking into this, you really owe it to yourself. Just contact us for a demo or evaluation and have a look at it if you haven't already seen what AlgoSec is capable of doing. So I think the touch points there, it's really easy to get started, and it's really, you get value out of it instantly, basically. So it's a really cool solution. If, like I said in the beginning, if you have any questions, please reach out to us afterwards. You'll get an email with a link to follow up. But thank you all for attending.